Welcome, viewers, to another fabulous episode of Unapologetically Free. Now, today I will be sharing with you, especially those of you struggling to make a productive breakthrough in almost any area of your life, why this concept of haste is the reason why you're stuck in a perpetual cycle of attempting something and then failing at something. Now, we all have heard of this phrase more haste, less speed. So, in my younger days, I wanted things fast. So, if I had acne, for example, I would search for ways to get rid of it in 3 days. If I could just wave a wand and get rid of it by tomorrow, I would. If I studied for my examinations, or when I studied for my examinations, I would reason to myself that I could finish my study the night before, or even the very morning of my examination. The prevailing mindset that I had was caused by consumerism, the idea of I want it now. So, in almost all things in my life, I wanted things really fast. The kind of time horizon in which I contemplated things seldom went beyond next week or even the next day. I believe that haste was king and that impatience was a virtue. But what I want to let you know through my experience, which you could cross check with your own life, is that haste leads to failure. You see, haste causes a lot of us to want to take shortcuts. What no one taught me then was that I would come up with plans that border on impossible for my current level of ability. So instead of applying principles like progressive overload, I would instead try to seek to maximize my productivity whenever I had this motivation to suddenly say, okay, let me study for 16 hours a day. Let me try and do things with maximum efficiency. Perhaps I would watch a motivational video and then be so hyped up about getting that beach body, for example. This pattern always followed me. I would be motivated, and then what happens is this motivation would fizzle out, and it is almost always followed by failure. So the cycle, motivation, loss of motivation, and failure kept repeating through my life. You know the saying, a rolling stone gathers no moss, and the turtle wins the race. It turns out to be true. Living a life of ups and downs really hurts your self esteem because you set brutal goals one after another. Being a self improvement junkie, maybe you read through a lot of books and then you think to yourself that you want to apply them all. You almost always end up failing to accomplish that which you set out to do. And your self esteem is seldom at a place where you can say to yourself, I can do what I set out to do. Now, this is very important with relation to your will because if every time you will yourself to do something and you fail to do so, you put this process through time, put this process through years. What happens is you start to even doubt your own ability when you say you would do something, whether or not you would really do it. But maybe the problem with it wasn't so much in your ability, it was in that you have set too high a goal, you have put too heavy a burden than what you could have bore at that time of setting your goal. So, introducing this concept of Kaizen. Now, a few years back, I read a book on the concept of Kaizen. It comes from this Chinese word, two words, gai shan. So the Japanese actually use it to recover their economy after World War II. In English, I think what you can say of it, what kind of words I would use to describe this philosophy of Kaizen is continuous improvements in very minute steps. See, this first originated from a manufacturing flaw where they would try and find the smallest little improvements that they can do to improve the manufacturing or engineering process. So instead of having a constant motivational hoo-ha and ups and down of thinking bigger, faster, and stronger, the philosophy of Kaizen is for you to take a step back and then just savor that little small improvement one after another. The result after I started to approach life after knowing Kaizen in earnest, my life really changed because I started to appreciate and enjoy the small victories. Now, some of it can really, really be very small, and it is very counterintuitive to most of what I taught beforehand because I used to think that maybe, for example, I want to practice 4 hours of piano a day so that I can be a great pianist. But what happens when you do something like that is you start to despise the value of what 5 minutes can do for you, number one. And number two, you fail to realize that momentum is very important in life. And small wins by itself, maybe the productivity doesn't mean a lot, but the amount of motivational momentum small wins can bring to you is very, very significant. So even if you only have time to do 30 minutes of work, don't despise the 30 minutes. Like I used to say, one step may not make a mile, but it is still a step anyhow. By being slower in my approach to life and by thinking about improvements in smaller steps, I was now able to focus, and for once, I was able to do what I set out to do. So, day after day, checking all the boxes from my to do list, which in my case is to me very manageable and not intimidating because I set my to do list based on my own understanding of myself. I don't try and emulate people like billionaires or Elon Musk and try and set out a grueling to do list that I know I would fail. But instead, I ask myself, what is the amount of difficulty that I know for sure I would be able to bear? Consistently doing a low level of intensity work throughout days is better than just doing one day of very, very intense work and then start to feel tired, burnt out, and have very poor sleep. See, sometimes comparison may still creep in. You may think, oh, done. Today I am only able to do 2 hours of work, 3 hours of work. I don't know how many hours of work is your current level of endurance when it comes to work or studies, but you are running your own race. And when I set out to apply this system, I feel good about myself when at the end of the day I did what I set out to do. The only difference is I no longer set atrociously difficult goals. In the long run, you can set such insane level of goals, but when it comes to the day to day, it is very unsexy. Maybe all you need to do is to write down I will not fap today and then a checkbox in your to-do list, and that could be the only thing you need to focus on that day. Start small. Then add one small layer of difficulty to your to-do list. And if you can manage for like 1-2 weeks, add another layer of difficulty. Start small, add difficulty levels in very small steps. See, this may speak against a lot of the pressures and brainwashing from society that kind of has this hustle culture. Sure, you could be able to hustle, but were you always born a hustler, or did you slowly build up that work ethic break after break? If currently the maximum you can do is work 4 hours a day, then just work 4 hours a day, and then maybe 2 weeks later add another 30 minutes, 4.5 hours of productive work, and slowly add it on. Don't allow guilt and all the negative emotions to overwhelm you. Ultimately, the conclusion is that consistency, day after day of consistency, always trumps sporadic efforts all day, every day. Now, if you liked today's video, like it, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you again.